You talk about in your new book, The Practice, that leadership is artistic. I work with a lot of leaders, and I know many of them who would not claim to be artists. I'm thinking about my friend Amanda, who's the director of a occupational therapy clinic, and she does amazing work. But she would say, I'm not creative. I'm not a designer. I don't take pictures. And of course, you and I know that our society has defined art in a very traditional, myopic sense. Well, what do you mean when you say leaders are artists?
Yeah, so I fear that Amanda is mistaken. We can all agree that Jackson Pollock was an artist. We might be able to agree that Marcel Duchamp was an artist, but certainly a musician like Philip Glass, a composer, they're an artist. All right, well, we're going to make it a little bit bigger. What about a playwright? What about someone who writes a novel that changes your life? These are artists as well. So what makes them artists if they don't have oil paint? What makes these people artists is they're doing something that might not work. They're creating an opportunity to touch other people. Well, Amanda's an artist too, because if she's able to calm a patient, if she's able to encourage a coworker, if she's able to get a difficult budget through the process, she doesn't have a playbook. She's not sitting there as a cog in the machine checking the boxes. She's doing something just as creative as Marcel Duchamp did when he put a ready-made into an art exhibit, which is, this might not work, but I see the genre, I see what I have to rhyme with, I see who I'm here for, I made this. And I think the best word we've got for that is art. But if we come up with a better one, I'm happy to use it.
I love the concept. I'd like to dive into it a bit more because I know often as small business owners, we're looking for best practices. We're looking for ways that are proven to work because we've got to create a profit. We have to make payroll. And there's a fear that if I'm too original or if I go out of bounds, it might fail and I might not be able to pay my people. And Seth, lives are at stake. And so how can I practice this idea of art and originality and things that don't work, yet still guarantee to our team that I'm not going to screw it up for them?
Yeah, what a great question. So let's think about the beautifully executed small businesses in your town and mine. The hardware store, the travel agent, the person who had a test prep center. Oh, that's right, they're all gone. Not one of these places made a mistake. Not one of these places didn't follow best practices, and now they're all gone. Where did they go? Well, the world changed. The world changed because somebody else showed up and invented online travel, and someone else showed up and invented the big box store, and you get the idea. So if the world is standing still, please be a manager. We need you to never make a mistake. But if the world is changing, if it's upside down, if we're paralyzed by a worldwide recession and a pandemic and long overdue focus on racial injustice, well, all of a sudden the rules are different, aren't they?
Yeah.
And if the rules are going to be different, you're going to have to do something that isn't proven. Because if you just wait for someone to copy, it's going to be too late. So I think we all discovered in 2020, there are no guarantees. That black swans are around every corner. That if you were showing people pictures in 2019 of, the red skies over San Francisco, and they said, oh, that's coming? Is that related to the pandemic I heard? No, they're totally unrelated. The black swans around every corner. Maybe it's a chronic slow thing. Maybe it's an urgent emergency. But no matter what, each of us is being called upon to act as if, to show up without a playbook and to invent the future, not just participate in the present. And I think that work is best done with a practice. I don't think you should wait till it's an emergency. And I don't think you should just do it a little bit. I think you should do it on the regular. You still have to manage. You still have to make a profit. You still have to make payroll. That's a given. Those are table stakes. Now what? Now what are you going to do?
I love that. I'm thinking about my friend David. He owns a HVAC company in Kansas. And if David were on the call with us right now, I imagine he would be saying something to the effect of, wow, that's inspiring. That's really great for companies like Dave Ramsey or people like Seth Godin who write books or technology companies that are always having to be on the bleeding edge. We have an HVAC company. We have technicians who are trained to do this a very specific way because there's science that's involved and we don't need them to be creative in people's crawl spaces. We might start a fire if we do that. So for David, who's trying to lead his company forward, and he realizes, I want to be a peak performing business. I want to figure out this creativity thing, but the nature of our business is so utilitarian. It's so, he might even call it basic, white rice. How does someone like David tap into this idea that as a leader, and for him to be really responsible and be generous with his team and in his work and their community that they impact, what does it look like for him to go on that hero's journey of becoming an artist the way you describe it?
All right, well, David, let's get real practical. I think you only have two choices. Either your motto is you can pick anyone and we're anyone, or your motto is we're the only one and we're worth paying extra. You'll pay a little bit more, but you get more than you pay for. It's one or the other. If it's the first one, if you are following in the footsteps of so many who have come before, then in the old days, you'd buy a bigger Yellow Pages ad than anybody else. Or in the old days, you'd hire a salesperson who would call businesses in your community one after another. In the new days, maybe you hope that you win in Yelp or Google when someone searches on you, but basically you're a victim. You're a victim of, did I get picked? If I got picked, can I get away with charging a nickel more than the standard price? But if all you're doing is making average stuff for average people, showing up for average customers and doing an average job for an average price, why exactly are we calling you the boss? You're doing very little. Your technicians are doing all of it. The alternative is to say, what we really sell, in addition to reliable heat and air conditioning, is a story of peace of mind, a story of what you tell your spouse, a story of more than just nickels or dimes. And I can tell you about a super successful business in my neighborhood that does exactly what you did. I called 5 people when our furnace went out in our 100-year-old house. And I don't care. They're all the same. Let them all come and give me a bid. I'll just pick the cheap one. Wouldn't you, if they're all the same? And the first person came and he put booties on. And I'm like, the stairs are right to the basement, are 2 steps away. Just go ahead. He said, no, we want to treat your house like our house. He said, I'm going to go downstairs and check it out. But while I'm downstairs, would you take a look at this? And he hands me a 2-page, single-spaced, typewritten sheet. And on it are names and phone numbers. And he says to me, these are your neighbors. You might recognize some of them. They've all volunteered to add their name and phone number to our list of references. We're hoping you will too when we're done. I'll go downstairs and look at the furnace. And after I got to the 5th name I recognized, when he got to the top of the stairs, I said, you're hired. I called the other 4 people and I canceled their appointments. Wouldn't you? Who's going to say to themselves and their spouse, oh, well, we had the best person here, but I shopped around and saved $50. Right. And now I have to live with everything that goes wrong forever. Right? So my question, David, is what would it take for your organization to have a sheet of paper like that one? Or let's just think about how the Internet of Things and technology changes, because you didn't sign up to understand TCP/IP and always on and the rest of it. But guess what? One of your competitors is going to show up and say, with 24-hour-a-day monitoring, I'm going to be able to cut the cost of this and this and this, and I'm going to build a network effect and. Well, that's scary because no one in Kansas has ever done that before. But the first person in Kansas who does it is going to clean the deck because that person is going to have every single business, the ones who have the most money at stake, hiring them to set up that sort of network effect monitoring because it's too expensive to be left out. Again, we're seeing technical change, emotional change, marketing change, all show up forcing you to lead instead of waiting to be picked.
So I'm curious, that moment when your friend, the HVAC guy, comes upstairs and you say you're hired, what was the magic? What you didn't know in that moment whether he was qualified to do the job or not at a technical level, but there was something that you felt that was very significant that he intentionally created. How would you summarize the art in that moment? What is it that we're creating as leaders?
Okay, so the first thing is I will never be technically qualified to know if an HVAC person is competent, particularly since he's not going to do the work. His technician is. So I have to start by saying your customers aren't as smart as you. But then the second thing is that many customers still want the cheapest one. And you know what? They shouldn't be your customers. Send them the phone number of your competitor. Send your competitor every single person who thinks price is the most important thing. And you will be left with the smallest viable audience, the smallest group of people who value something other than price. Because There are two ways to look at the world when you're buying something. And you don't need, want, or deserve every single customer. You just need your customers. You know, Dave Ramsey has one of the most popular radio shows in America. And yet 90% of the people in America don't listen to it. I write best-selling books, and yet 99% of the people in America have never read one of them. Fine, it's enough. Focus on your people, ignore the rest.
What's the drawback on competing on price? It sounds like you're saying it's a race to the bottom. You're never going to win that race. First of all, you commoditize kind of what you do, and it just becomes a transaction. But as leaders who really want to build a lasting legacy, impact, build a great team, do something remarkable, why should price be a non-issue?
Well, every once in a while, someone can actually systemically, structurally win on price. Walmart pulled it off for 20 years. That's really rare. Instead, what you end up doing is apologizing all the time and using price as your excuse. Well, what did you expect? It was cheap. And I think it's better for our peace of mind and our career to apologize once for the price than over and over and over again for everything else. And the second thing is that in order to win on price, you have to cut more corners than anybody else. That's how you do it. And some corners are easier to cut than others, but there's always going to be someone who's going to cut one more corner than you. And that means you don't get to work with the people you want to work with. It means you don't get to treat people the way you want to be treated. That maybe you believe you shouldn't be dumping your used gas without putting it in the proper storage container. Yeah, but you have a competitor who's doing that. And if you don't do it too, you're going to lose. Well, all of a sudden, we end up with, a doping scandal. We end up with somebody who says, well, everyone did it, so I had to cheat. Yeah, you don't have to cheat because you don't have to race against those people.